Hey y'all, so this time I am outside grilling and I'm also making some side dishes inside the home as well as some desserts. This is some food that I made from my last barbecue, and maybe it'll be some inspiration for when you have your next barbecue, or maybe it's a side dish that you're bringing to a potluck or to someone's home. So, yeah, this menu will include some spaghetti. I've also made some seafood salad. I did also make some cheesy potatoes as well as some corn on the cob. I also did some brownies and I also made some crab beignets and everything is good. Yeah, it's like it's a lot of stuff that was happening on this menu. I also did these peach cruffins. They're kind of like a croissant and muffin and peach cobbler all at the same time. And I also had made some cream cheese brownies, which is a family favorite. So yeah, we're going to be in the kitchen. This is actually going to take me 2 days to get all of this done. I've cut down this video so that you guys can watch it and not get bored. This video was originally a full hour, but I was able to cut it down to about 22 minutes. So let's get started. So I have this Oklahoma Joe's rib rub recipe that I have on my website, and I just love all things about Oklahoma Joe's. This recipe is super easy. It's on a few websites. I decided to put it on mine because I'm always going back to it. And hey, I should get the engagement on my own website. So this recipe is including some sugar, brown sugar, garlic powder, chili powder, smoked paprika, cumin, salt, onion powder, white pepper, as well as black pepper. And again, all of those ingredients are on my website, and that is plussizeinchicago.com. Just look for Oklahoma Joe's rib rub recipe, or just look up ribs and it'll pop up for you. So I am putting this seasoning inside of a shaker. It's so much that I made that I ended up putting some in a bowl, and I'm just gonna put it all over these ribs. These ribs have been I've actually put some mustard on both sides. I'm doing like 3 slabs of ribs because we have a lot of folks that are coming over that do eat pork. So, and of course I do too. So yeah, I'm rubbing this with some mustard as a binder, and then I'm shaking that seasoning all over. Now, again, this is day 1. So I actually woke up like around 6:30 in the morning. I'm doing all of this before I even head into work. I'm actually going into the office this particular day. So yeah, I got up super early, started off with seasoning my meat. And again, this is day 1 that I'm doing all of these things. So again, I'm going to be seasoning 3 slabs of ribs, and these are St. Louis ribs. I'm not the best at cutting them. You know, there's like this rib tip area that you can slice. I did my best, and there was no complaints once I got everything done. So yeah, so I'm putting all of this like into a large aluminum pan. And once I'm done seasoning all of this, I'm just going to cover it up with some aluminum foil, and all the seasonings are going to be marinating overnight. Besides ribs, I also did a few other things. I did some shrimp, and I'm going to show you the seasonings that I use for that. I always start off with a olive oil as a binder when I'm doing seafood or meats. So this is the mango pepper. I love that seasoning. I'm also doing some salmon, and these are the seasonings for that. I actually have this particular recipe on my website. Just look up salmon. So all the seasonings were there. I'm sprinkling it all over it. Again, I'm going to add this into a pan, cover it with some aluminum foil. The next meat I did was some poultry, and I'm using the Spanglish Asadero seasoning, the Polo Asadero seasoning. Again, I had added olive oil, seasoned it with that. This is some steak, same thing, olive oil. And I believe this is the Spanglish Asadero. Oh no, actually I used the Kinder's on this one. The Kinder's Brazilian steak. So yeah, you can use that. Spanglish Asadero also has a carne asada seasoning that I like, but this one I'm actually using apparently today is the Kinder's. The next thing that I had was some chicken breast that I had cut up. Actually, this was chicken tenders. Some chicken tenders I had cut up, and I'm using that Spanglish Asadero seasoning, and I'm going to mix all that up by hand, and then I'm going to use this butter chicken sauce, You can find this like in the Indian section of your local grocery store. If you don't see it there, you can also find this online. Walmart also carries it, as well as Amazon. So again, pouring that sauce on there. All of this is going to marinate in basically overnight. So once I went to work, came back, I decided to let's start working on these cream cheese brownies. This is a family favorite. This recipe is also on my website, again, plussizeandchicago.com. You're going to look up brownies, or you're going to look up cream cheese brownies, and that recipe is there. Using my KitchenAid standing mixer for this, but you can use a regular hand mixer with this too. So the first thing that I'm doing is getting the cream cheese filling, ingredients together. And you're going to use, and I'm making this for, it's a big batch. So on my website, it's for one batch. This is for 2 batches. So, just doubling the ingredients. So it's 2 blocks of cream cheese, and I'm using 1/2 cup of sugar, as well as 2 eggs that are beaten, and 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. And I'm going to mix all that together in one of my my KitchenAid bowls. And then once I'm done with that, I'm going to use a separate KitchenAid bowl, and I'm going to do the browning filling. So this is a 2-part recipe. So with the brownies, I use my favorite brownie mix that I get from Sam's Club, and that's the Hershey's Triple Fudge Brownie Mix. But you can use any brownie mix that you like too. So again, I'm doubling the ingredients because I'm making basically a double batch. So I'm using 2 pouches, I'm using 2 tablespoons of water, 1/2 cup of vegetable oil or canola oil, and 2 eggs that are beaten too. And I'm gonna whip all that together, make sure everything is mixed very nice. And once all of that is done, I'm going to pour the fillings, both fillings, into a casserole dish. And the casserole dish, I'm going to spray it with like some pan spray. You can use your favorite spray. I know some folks use like the Baker's Joy spray, but long as it's something that will help with not allowing those brownies to stick to the baking dish. And I'm going to be using a glass baking dish. You can use some parchment paper too, if that's something that you like to do. So again, pouring the brownie filling in first. And I'm using the spatula because it's just so much easier to scrape all the ingredients into the casserole dish using the spatula. And I'm going to do the same thing with the cream cheese filling, using the spatula and pouring everything on top of it. And then the fun part with this recipe is using a skewer. So you can use a knife or even a fork or a spoon, but I like to use a skewer. And I am swirling the cream cheese into the brownie filling. There are some people that like to just put the cream cheese on top, but I like to just swirl it in. And again, the recipe is on my website, plussizeandchicago.com. You can get how long you're going to be baking at. I think it's 325 degrees for like almost a full hour. So the next thing that I'm doing here is making the spaghetti. The spaghetti, I'm making enough for like a half pan. When I make my spaghetti, I use ground beef. Some people like to use turkey meat. I like ground beef for mine. I'm also adding some minced garlic in there, as well as the Lipton onion recipe soup mix. And that just gives it a whole nother flavor. And if you guys follow my page, my channel, you know that my husband hates onions. So I have to like mix this up really good and let that cook really well, so he does not taste those onions when I'm cooking. So letting that simmer, and I'm going to start by adding some spaghetti into a pot of boiling water. Going back to the ground beef, I'm adding Prgo's spaghetti sauce. That's my favorite. I also get that from Sam's Club too. Of course, that's just the place that I shop at all the time. But I use like a full jar of that sauce, and I'm adding that to the ground beef, and I'm just gonna let that simmer. That also helps cook down those onions too, so my husband doesn't taste it. Once everything is done, I drained the spaghetti noodles. I'm adding the meat mixture in there, and I'm just going to stir away to get everything incorporated. One of the things I do after I've stirred in as much as possible the ground beef with the noodles, I don't want to make it all mushy or anything, but I always add some more spaghetti sauce into there. And I also like to add some Parmesan cheese, and you can use fancy Parmesan cheese. I'm just going to be using the Kraft Parmesan cheese that's inside the green container, and tastes just as good. I'm putting a lot in there because that's what I like. And once I get that in there, I'm just going to stir it up and put all of this into a half pan aluminum pan. And of course, I'm going to let this cool off because, again, this is day one of me cooking. This is just one of the side dishes that I'm doing. And once that cools off, then I'll put it in the refrigerator because, I just don't want the spaghetti to get mushy. So it's best for you to let that cool off before you put it into the refrigerator. So that's going to be sitting on the side while I start looking to the rest of the food that I'm going to be cooking. But before I do the next dish, I'm going to be checking on my brownies because my brownies have been cooking for about an hour and I want to make sure they're not burning. So I'm going to get those out the oven. So these are looking really good right now, and I know all of the family members and friends are going to be enjoying these. I cut these into little small squares, and I'm again letting that cool off before I put it in the refrigerator. The next thing I'm going to be making again on day one is the seafood salad. So in this seafood salad, I am using shrimp and imitation crab. I'm also adding some tomatoes, some celery, bell pepper, and some red onions. Well, actually, those are shallots that I'm using, but you can use red onions too. Again, cutting them really small so the husband's not tasting it. So after I've let that macaroni cool off, again, it has to be cold. You can rinse it with some cold water if you need to, do something quick and not, put the macaroni in the refrigerator if you don't have enough time. But I rinsed it off with some cold water and made sure that it was cold before I started adding the rest of these ingredients. This is another recipe that's on my website, and that's again plussizeinchicago.com, and you're just going to look up seafood salad. Once I put all the shrimp and the tomatoes, celery and all that, I'm adding the imitation crab. I'm using Hellmann's as my dressing. And I've added some seasoning salt as well as some black pepper. I'm going to use that Hellmann's as my dressing. A lot of people like Duke's. I also use Kraft mayo, which is actually one of my favorites. Any of those will work as long as you're not using sandwich bread. I absolutely I just despise sandwich bread. I don't even know why they even made such a thing. It's just so nasty. But you want to use a dressing again like Hellmann's, Duke's, or Kraft mayo, and you're adding that into your large bowl of all of these ingredients. You're going to stir this with a spoon. You're going to be, you may not have enough mayo in there at first, like I don't. You're just going to add some more mayo in there, just as long as it's nice and creamy and has a really good consistency. Thing that I had forgot to mention was that I added bell peppers as well as tomatoes. I know a lot of people don't like tomatoes. When I was younger, I didn't like tomatoes either, but in this salad, it actually works. So I actually have some family members that say, oh, you know what? I don't like the tomatoes, but if you don't put them in there, for some reason, it doesn't taste as good. So they just pick around the tomatoes, but I guess the acidity from the tomatoes just gives it a different flavor. So just letting you know that if you decide to skip the tomatoes, you may be missing some of the flavoring of that. And of course, you can always skip around it. But some people would be like, why am I spending money on tomatoes and chopping them up in there? And I ain't gonna eat it. But anyway, so yeah, this is the shrimp and crab seafood salad. Again, another family favorite. And you want to make sure that this is covered and you want to put that in the refrigerator, again, because this is only day one of me getting all these things together. So now it is day two, I've woken up very early. I am starting to grill. This is my first time using a smoker, and I realized, like, after I've cooked on it like twice, that technically I can smoke these ribs and I'm about to put on there, and which I did try, and it was taking forever. I needed to eventually do the indirect method, but I started off with the smoker side. I do know now, it's been a few weeks later that I've been using this grill, that if I'm going to be doing some ribs in the future and I want to cook them for like within a 2 hour, 2.5 hour period, that I'm going to use the indirect method. I've put a whole bunch of meat on that you guys have not seen while I'm videoing, but you will see all the meat I've done at the end of this video. While all of that is cooking, I'm running back and forth into the kitchen, and I put some potatoes on the stove, I put some corn on the stove, and now I'm working on these peach cruffins. So to make these, you're going to start off with a peach cobbler filling. So I'm using butter, I'm using sugar, I'm using cinnamon, nutmeg, as well as some vanilla extract. And I'm using canned peaches for this recipe. Normally when I make peach cobbler, I do use like fresh peaches or frozen peaches, but I was like, hey, we need to do something really quick. Let's hurry up, let's use these canned peaches. I'm also adding like a cornstarch slurry to make it, thicken up. And then once that's done, I'm going to use some puff pastry, and I'm going to like add some flour onto my cutting board, and I've added the puff pastry, and I'm like rolling it out in my little rolling pin, and I'm going to cut those into little squares. I'm adding those squares into a muffin pan, and I'm going to I'm just going to add the peaches into the muffin pan, and then I'm going to pour the sauce on top of it. Because this sauce is going to spill over, I've added this muffin pan into a larger aluminum pan, so when it's baking, if anything runs out, it's not getting all over my stove. So again, this is a peach cruffin recipe. This can be found on my website, again, at plussizeinchicago.com. You want to look for peach cruffins, and all the ingredients is there, as well as how long you're cooking it. I topped this off with some powdered sugar. As you can see in the background, I had an apple pie that I also had cooked too. That's actually a Marie Callender's apple pie. You can find that in the frozen food section, and put it in the oven for about an hour and it's done. And I'll tell you, that apple pie from Marie Callender's is the bomb, as well as these peach cruffins was. Everybody loved them. I'm going to be making them again this summer. Now, the next thing that I'm making is some crab beignets. Now, this I was not planning on making, but my mom had saw me making them. It definitely was a couple of months ago, and she was like, the next time I come over to your home, you got to make sure that you make these crab beignets. And so I was like, okay, I had to live up to that promise. So again, even though I was cooking all the things, I wanted to make sure that I had these out for her. This is also like a very nice appetizer if people are waiting to eat the real food or the main dishes. You can feed them these crab beignets. So very simple recipe. Again, it's on my website, plussizeinchicago.com. Just look up crab beignets and you'll find all the things there. So this is a two-part recipe. Basically, you're making a sauce to go onto the lump crab, as well as adding some panko breadcrumbs. It's a very nice light breadcrumb. You're gonna mix all that together. You're gonna make little mini balls. You can put these in the refrigerator, put them in there for at least about an hour to 2 hours, and then you're gonna drop them into some oil. I realized while I was filming that I had forgot to record when I was making these. So you will see that this is actually a video from when I did before, the one that my mom had saw me making these. So I've actually put like some old video footage into this one so you can see how it's done. But yes, you want to add them to some canola oil or some vegetable oil. You're gonna fry them up for about 5 minutes total, and that's like, both sides about 2.5 minutes each. As long as they're golden brown, you're gonna take them out and you're gonna add them to some paper towels and let them drain. But yes, this was another recipe that everyone loved, and you can use this as an appetizer for your next event. So the next thing that I made was a sauce for the corn on the cob. I basically have 2 sticks of butter. I'm adding the Kinder's grilled veggie seasoning. I'm gonna let that all, get mixed up together, and I'm pouring that over the corn on the cob. I've added this to a crock pot, just on the warm setting so they can stay warm, before everyone gets to eat. And that was it. The next thing I did was take some potatoes that I had boiled. I put it in this cast iron skillet, added some cheese, some green onions, and some parsley, let it smoke over the grill. And again, that was it. The next thing that I did was check on my ribs that I had been cooking. Those are looking really, really good. So I've taken those out, sliced them up, put those in a large pan, and everyone ate and enjoyed. Some of the other food that I had made was some hot dogs. I had added some Polishes, some hamburgers, also made those chicken skewers, some shrimp skewers, and everyone just feasted and had a very good time. I enjoyed having everyone over. It was nice for me to be able to use this new grill. And I'm hoping that you all had a good time watching this video too, seeing all the things that I had cooked. Hopefully it's given you some inspiration for the next time that you're grilling or the next time you're making some side dishes. If you've noticed, I am able to cook on the outside and the inside because my husband does not doing any cooking at all except for making the small things that can go inside of a microwave. So I am the main cook here. So hoping that you enjoyed what you've been seeing. And if you like what you saw and you're not a current subscriber, please subscribe to my channel. If you are a subscriber, thank you for continuing to support me. And if you like what you've seen, leave a comment. You can also share this video too. I'll see you guys next time.